Hi, Brooke. Welcome to Mom on the Verge.
Hey, so good to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. Right before we started recording, so you and I were in a podcasting course
Mhm.
together. That's how we know each other. And I was saying how I saw your stuff on social media, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I need to have that girl on my podcast." And then I realized I had already booked you. I just wasn't recognizing your name with your podcast name, your
Eh,
your actual name and your podcast name. Well, I wasn't putting
Hey,
them together.
it's so good. Thank you for saying that because we were just all talking about how hard social media is too. And the fact that at least something has popped in your world. I'm like, okay, some things that I'm trying are working out, or at least connecting me with people that are just so great to talk to. So
Yes. And your
thanks for sharing
podcast
that.
name, I'll throw it out there. It's called The Messy
Yes.
Middle. And I love the
Yep.
name. It's so catchy and it just immediately caught my attention. And
Thank
I
you. Thank you.
immediately was like, what does she mean by the messy middle? Right. Because that
Yeah.
can have a lot of different meanings to it. So
Yes.
why did you name your
Yes.
podcast that? And
You
what is the
know,
real meaning behind it?
Thank you for asking that. And actually, after I named it, and then some people were asking me about like cleaning your house and stuff. I was like, oh, maybe it's going to throw, but whatever. We'll go. It was, literally going to be in the messy middle and just put it out there and see. But for me, and it's part of my background, so I could tell, but this culmination in my life of working in a job. I was in corporate for 20 plus years. The pandemic hit. I have 3 kids. So being a mom, and I hit this point, and I like to say, I felt like I had outsourced both my identity to my job and to being a mom. And I hit this point, and I don't know how many others, of like, what do I want? I was stressed at my job. My husband was working a corporate job. We weren't living the life, we wanted around the kids. We had nannies. And anyways, I hit this point and I was like, what is that? And for me, it was both one, leaning into figuring out who I was and what I really wanted. So, like, in figuring out your authentic self, and two, figuring out from both professionally and personally, like what makes me happy, what makes me healthy. Because I think 40 and women also have this, go through this transition of just like it's
Yeah.
different post baby and all that stuff. And again, outsourcing it to being a mom, I hadn't taken care of myself. So for me, it was, I love having these conversations, but I wanted to learn. I was on this journey to learn for myself what makes me happiest, healthiest. Is it really sustainable with 3 kids? There's a lot of stuff you hear
Mm-hmm.
out there. I'm like, can I really do that? And so the podcast for me is actually my own journey. I'm like, what is out there that is for women? And I'll use the example too. And this is a really long-winded way to answer for you, but you hear about, like, my husband was into cold plunges and intermittent fasting and some of the health stuff. I'm like, does that work for me? And
Yes.
some people talk about, your morning routine and waking up and just getting really centered. I'm like, well, I have 3 kids that wake up at 6 8. Like, so it was really
Right.
trying to embrace where I am in life and not putting it off until the kids are older, or I get the next promotion at work, because then it's time for me to prioritize myself, or I finish the project that I'm working on at work, whatever it is. And like, now it's always messy. It is always messy. So
Yes.
if you can embrace it and figure out what makes you the healthiest and happiest, that is actually what the journey's about. It's about like enjoying, it's always messy, and just leaning into that. So
Yeah.
that's long-winded. I don't know if any of that resonates, but it
That
was like
100%, that all resonates, every single word that came out of your mouth. And I know that it will resonate with my audience. And we talk a
oh my
lot
God.
about this. Like,
Yeah.
it's, we lose ourselves in motherhood and in our career,
Yes.
and we outsource our identity to these
Yes.
things, and then we start questioning, like, who the heck am I, and what even makes me happy, or what
Yes.
even brings joy to me, or
Yeah.
what am I passionate about, what do I care about,
Yeah.
besides, of course, my children and my family. But what the just me pieces, like this
Yes.
just me, not
Yeah.
related to anyone else, what is just me. And you have to go on a journey often to go back and find that.
It's this long journey. And I think first, because I worked with a lot of, and I'm not, I'm not, my business and company and where I worked, I know is not unique, but I worked with a lot of people that are like, and moms too, that are either blissfully unaware, meaning like everyone's unhappy, right? Like at work, you're like, oh, it's just how it is. So there's that factor of like, so, it's just, it is what it is, and I'll just wait. Or moms, I've talked to a lot of moms too with young kids that are like, it's just not possible for me to make a change. I have a newborn and whatever. And so part of it, I think, is this, it's almost flipping the corner to be like, it could be better. It's this understanding that like, it doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't mean it's easy. It doesn't mean that, oh, it's just going to be a flip of the switch, but like, I'm not going to accept how it is right now. And I know there's something better out there for me. So I think the first thing that stopped at least me was like, I'll put it off later. It's like, just every like Sunday night, you get that feeling like it's fine. So it was this like angst of like, I don't want to put it off anymore. But then it was also like, but I think it's going to feel worse before it feels better. And that's part of that middle, you're going to like, there's this period of like, what actually makes me happy? I don't even know. And I'm aware now that it could be better. So now every time like something, I'm like, oh, I'm aware, as opposed to just going through life and being like, oh, my day was fine. My day was fine, you know?
Yes.
So,
And I was just listening to another podcast, and they had a woman on there who is, she specializes in intuition, but fascinating episode. But she talked about how the brain can only go from known to known.
Yeah.
So the brain does not really have the capability to live in the unknown. And the messy middle is the unknown, right?
It's the unknown.
So it's the unknown. So in your head, you're like, okay, I know this job and this life that I'm in, or I know like something else that I can maybe envision, like maybe quitting my job and being a stay-at-home mom. Okay. Like maybe these are the two places that you're going.
100%.
Right?
That's where,
right? But what's in between there? Because there is a huge, vast, enormous amount of space between those two options, but our brains are really not capable of living in that space.
It's so true.
So we have to kind of jump. We have to jump into the void, like literally jump.
And you know what? And I think that's really such a good point to bring up too, because that is actually what started me a little bit on this journey too, was I came across this podcast. It was called Lessons from a Quitter. I think I'm getting that right. Lessons from a Quitter. And it was this woman who used to be a lawyer, and it totally resonated with how I was feeling at the moment. And she had left, and she interviewed, all she did for every episode was interviewing people who had left their jobs and like started their own thing, like made this pivot. And it was step by step, like, well, how did you know? What did you do? And for me, that was like, that combined with actually a book by Tim Ferriss, which was the 4-Hour Workweek, which was like, oh my God, this like you can like restructure your day to really focus. It doesn't have to be the typical 9 to 5, like you said, or stay at home. And those were not the two that I wanted. And so for me, it was like, okay, there is this possibility. I've seen, I don't know what it looks like for me, but there's out there, to your point. So my brain was like, oh my God, there's this third option that might fit for me. But the path from A to B has a lot of unknowns, like we were just talking about, where it's like action creates that clarity, but your brain is like, there's way too many things. And most of us are risk averse. You want to figure out all the things, but getting into the messy and feeling that is actually a sign that you're growing. It's the sign that you're pushing your comfort zone a little bit more every single time, but it's knowing that that is the sign of growth. And it's not the sign that you're doing it wrong or that you're doing it backwards. And it's like, you can intuitively know it. And then it's like a muscle, right? You're strengthening every time. You're like, oh, here it is again. Here it is again. I'm pushing myself, but it never feels good. It never feels good, right?
We were just talking before we hit record, like how starting these podcasts, like there's so much to figure out. There's so much to figure out as far as systems that you want to implement and processes, and how you place processes that work for you, and how you market, and do you use social media or not, and all of these, and so much technology. We're just talking about a virtual cable before we got on here, like a virtual cable. I've never heard of a virtual cable in my life. And honestly,
another language here, right?
Yes. But so this is the messy middle. This is like taking the leap. You don't know what's underneath of you. You don't know if there's a safety net. You don't know if anything's going to catch you, but having faith that you can figure it out, right? Having the faith that you can figure it out. And step by step, as each new challenge comes along, you are resourceful enough and determined enough to work through it and get to the other side.
Katie, I like to equate it to it's two things. It's like scaffolding, right? So you are actually proving to yourself that you can bet on yourself, that you can follow through with something, that you can figure it out. And a lot of us, so for me, I went to grad school, and I was excelling in a business, but it was by others' terms, so I was looking for their feedback to say, oh, you did a great job. Or even with kids, that's so hard. That was a whole new world for me too, to learn, but it was external validation. So for me, it was starting small to be like, okay, this is uncomfortable, but I stuck with it, and look, and I figured it out. Even if it was like the smallest thing of you could say God, I'm leading these huge projects at work, but now I'm really proud of myself because I was able to your point, get a social media post scheduled, and it could be things that I would have minimized, but I'm doing those things. And I equate it to it's like, so my son, who's now 12, but the first time he was he plays football. And so the first time he played, he was super sore. So his muscle, and all of us who have done anything know, okay, sore muscles mean you're building them back up stronger, whatever. But for him, he was like, I think I've hurt myself. I need to take a break. This isn't good. And I was like, that's what growth and learning and pushing yourself is similar to, right? The first time you do it, you're like, this is not me. This is horrible feeling. This is like, I feel like I don't know what I'm doing. People think I'm stupid. I'm all the things, right?
Yeah.
Actually, what you're doing is just proving to yourself that, there's that sign that actually I'm pushing myself. Oh, okay, good. So it's like building muscle, but it's the mental muscle of like how to keep doing it. And I say this because we were just talking about like, I am in it. And I'm like, okay, I say it like, okay, let me keep practicing myself because
yes,
God, it's a lifelong journey.
It is a lifelong journey and something you have to keep reminding yourself of. But here's the question that I would pose to you, and I'm asking this question partially for myself as well. So you're in it, right? I mean, you're in it, you're struggling with this new thing that you're trying to learn.
Yeah.
How do you know the difference between
100%.
Actually, this is not meant for me. I need to just release this, bless it and release it. Yeah. Or it is meant to me, but for me, but I'm in a moment that I just need to get over this hump, and get through it. You have an answer for that?
So it is, okay, I will give you my answer, but it is such a good question because that was my thing. That was my thing, that my question that I had for everyone that I met, because I was like, I was misaligned. And I have to clarify, because in my job for 20 years, like clearly I was happy. I was doing things that I liked, but it wasn't quite, I had never stopped to say, is this really what I want? Do I actually want to go to the next level? Like all those things. And so then when I left and was doing things that put me out of my comfort zone, I just equated it to, it was that. So I was like, how do you know? How do you know? And for me, it is so nuanced. I wanted like a black and white. I wanted to be like, this is it. This is not it.
We all, yes.
So two things. So one, I was always in my head. So if you were still in your head, and what I mean by that was like, I am an analytical background and finance, but I wanted to like problem solve. I never knew what my body, I never was in my body. Like, am I feeling stressed? Where do I feel it? Like, am I happy now? Where's the excitement? Like, I had no idea how feelings were in my body. So that was the first step, was even getting out of my head and thinking things and into my body. Yeah. But once I could do that, I can say that I can feel a difference. So when I was misaligned, there would be a time someone would tell me to do something. They would tell me like a project or like whatever it is. Or you can even like somebody asks you, hey, do you want to go do XYZ with our friend, go out on a Friday night or something, whatever it is. Yeah. My initial reaction is always, yes, how can I make that happen? But there'd always be this underlying feeling of like, like this dread. It's like, I equate it to like the Sunday night feeling, and it could be with wonderful friends, or it could be a project that you've done 1,000 times, but there is this dread. And as it gets closer, you're like, okay, I got to do it. It's like this feeling. Yeah. When I am pushing myself in a positive way, there is excitement. And I was just telling you, I just did this like retreat. I hosted a retreat. There was excitement from when I decided in March till the retreat came in September of like, I'm planning it, I'm doing it, I'm putting myself out there. I'm like, I had no problem. Like, I hate, putting myself on social media, but I was going live, like all that. There was excitement. But as it got closer, then all the doubt. And that was totally the ego and because underneath that, when I could stop and be like, oh, but what if it's already happened and it's like wonderful? I had the excitement came back, so I could differentiate. But it was, so all that to say, it is so nuanced though. And it takes sitting and knowing yourself first, because you're not going to know if you're misaligned until you know what that feels like in your body and like how you manifest that. Like, and I will say, right. And one of the things too, like I like to use this example, it's a horrible example, but I like to use it as like, for me, nervousness and anxiety is so close to excitement, like how it feels in my chest and fluttery. And until I sat, like a lot of times, like exciting things I'd like mix them up with it, like nervousness, so I feel like in my life, I missed out on probably a lot of things that were actually really exciting, but it was too close in a feeling to like nervousness. And I was like, oh, this means I don't actually want to do this. So it just, it started opening my eyes to more and more. It's like, I got to sit with this and feel like really how that feels, and it was so counterintuitive to like, I want to open a book and read and figure out the problem and like write the like math equation to it or something. It's just, that's not how life works anymore.
It's not, and we're not taught that. And I this is kind of a sidebar. I probably will have someone on my show coming up on alternative schooling, because that's a whole other ball game that
my God, with the kids.
Yes, that I've started to really reevaluate that whole situation. But I think we are taught that there's a right and a wrong. There's a right or a wrong. There's a yes or a no. There's a book that will be able to tell you. There's a formula that will be able to make you figure it out. And in reality, most of life is the gray or the messy middle. And it is not like, there's not one right answer. There's not one right way to do things. There's not one anything. And so you have to learn how to pay attention to your body, how to go inside, and how to block out what a lot of the world tells you, which is also really hard. And my daughter, we just had this example. She was in Algebra 2 honors and she was struggling. And I said, I think maybe you should drop this class. And she was pushing. She wanted to stay in the class. And finally it got to the deadline of dropping the class and she was still really struggling. And I said, let's go down to a regular, like not honors, a regular class. And she didn't want to, but I said, we're doing this. Like, this is too much on you. And once she did, even though her brain was telling her, no, I'm staying in it, I'm going to do well, I'm going to do this. Once she knew that she had no other choice. Yes. Her whole body, she was like, I didn't realize what I was carrying. Like, I feel so much better not having that on my plate. And it was trying to teach her the difference between giving up on something, right? Just being quitting and giving up versus recognizing when something just isn't for you and releasing it. And I think there's a big difference between consciously releasing something and giving up. Or being in something that's really hard, but recognizing that it is your path and still moving forward.
100%. And I know this is but what a good parenting for your, like because I feel like that's so important for kids is you're absolutely right. So there's a grades that they're getting. I just had this with my son and same thing, but with with English. And so it was writing but the same thing is like, where is the fine line? And I had to sit with it as a parent, be like, what do I want him to get out of this? And it's not necessarily the grade. So I was like, you can stay in the higher level and get the lower grade, but I want you to still love learning because that's a lifelong thing in my mind. And I want you to know how to study and how to kind of hold yourself accountable. Check. He had done that, and I was like, it was like, I want you to know how to push yourself. You'd already done that. So now we've crossed the threshold. I want you to know when you've given your all and it's not right. And I don't want you then to look at externally and say, people think I should do it, mom and dad or my teacher or whatever. And so it was like, I was like, that's what I want him to learn. And I got to trust that he's done it enough and not. And so you're absolutely right. And it's so hard because schooling now is, and I could give it to teachers. There's the way it's set up and teachers have somebody, but it's absolutely right. It's like, those are the things I want them, my kids to take from it. And so the grades and kind of how it's set up now, it's like, how did you think about that versus, okay, just give me the answer,
Yes. And because the system is what it is and everybody's working within the system and we could have a whole discussion on that, but that's not the point. The point is that in the real world and your real life, we want to be able to discern where we want to put our hard work and our energy and where it's just out of alignment for us. And as much as we try, it will never feel good to be in that space.
And it's knowing yourself, like we said earlier, it's that muscle. So if kids are starting it and you're helping your daughter or, my kids, I hope too, is like, build that muscle of what does that feel like? Who am I? Me first, I like to say, which is not, and that's not a selfish thing, but that is like, I have seen since I've tried to make these changes and since I left my job and tried to be more aligned, it's a much better relationship with my kids and my husband because I'm more patient. I know exactly, I'm more proactive in what I know I need than reactive in a negative way, And so if kids can start learning that, or anybody at like whatever age, it is a practice and a muscle that you need to build up over time to realize, oh, that's when I'm out of alignment. And again, I'll go back to like a lot of us with nutrition and fitness know that, and we have very tactical, like metrics. It's like, okay, if I've gained weight or if I'm sore, it means X, Y, Z. But like when it comes to mental health and knowing yourself and authenticity and feelings, like that is newer in this, at least in my realm of world, right? And like leaning into that. And so what does that look like in the world? It's hard to say, okay, check. I'm way more, I have a better relationship and I'm more patient or so, you know, but like you look back and you say, oh, it felt messy. Like we go back to that. It felt messy. I was pushing myself. Like it was, maybe the grades weren't as great. I had to walk away from something, but look how much happier I am. Look at the relationships I have. Look how much I know myself. And that is like way better in turn, you know, like in the long
So
run.
much better. So much better. I call it a full body yes. Like when you know something's right for you, it's a full body yes. And so many times on this podcast, I'll be talking to a guest and I get like full body chills, head to toe, like all the hairs are standing out.
I love it.
Yes. And I'm like, oh my God, like that's a full body yes. Like whatever that person is saying, it is resonating so deeply with my body that every hair is standing on its end. And you want to feel like that, you know, right? When you're making these decisions, you want to feel that full body, like every part of you is like, yes. And it doesn't mean that because you have a full body yes, all of it's going to be easy, right? You're going to run up against these things that are hard, but you're still know that you're on the right path at that time.
And it's exactly, it's learning that. And I think, you know, there's all these different things out there like human design or whatever, but you can know like, okay, I got that full body. Yes, that's what it is for me. But I know that I am a person that has to sit with something for a day or two, you know, but again, it takes knowing yourself is like, oh no, I'm a gut reaction. Like, I know it's not going to change. Like I got to listen to my first instinct, whatever, but it's knowing that and learning those lessons and being like, oh, you know, like my son, and this is such a small thing, but like, I mean, he's in a Minecraft or whatever, and you can trade on I don't know, all these things that he's in or whatever, but he told me he like traded like a coin that he earned or something. And he was like, I think I'm regretting it. But like, so he's 8, but he had to sit with it. And I was like, oh God. So that is, but it's like reflection, right? I was like, okay, well, wait a day or two and see if you still regret it. Or maybe it's just like, that was a good decision, but you're like, oh, I just gave up something that meant something to me. But I'm like, as I'm telling him, I'm like, I've got to take my own advice sometimes, you know? It's like, no. That was really great what I told him. I wish I should do that more. Like,
you know what? That's what happens when you start doing this, like all this internal work, you actually realize how much you're absorbing. And then I will say things, even on this podcast, in my newsletter, I will go back and re-listen, reread, and I'm like, that was me.
That is a great idea. I should take.
So it just starts happening naturally, you know, as you start opening up and learning more about yourself and how things really operate in the world. And that is what I think I've probably learned the most is how things really operate on this planet Earth that we live in. And it's not the way I thought that they did.
No, and it makes you, I don't know for you, but for me, it makes me, and I still don't have the answer, but you know, like you know, the traditional route that I was taking of schooling and then education, you know, and then like job and then promotion and kids. And I don't want to, clearly my kids fill me up a ton and the job did, but I was like, what am I actually working for? You know, like what, and I thought I knew, but this has had me like this whole other world, because again, I finally came to the realization that my identity was so tied up in that stuff. And I was like, but without it, what am I and what do I want? Like, what is success to me? Because now I still feel like, okay, I want to work hard and still this like productivity need to like be productive. I'm like, but in for what, you know? And I still, I'm like, okay, so if it's, maybe it's financial, maybe it's impact, you know, but like, it makes you think about like, you want to always continuously grow and like better myself, but like, what does that look like and for what, you know, like tying that to like something. And like I said too, I've seen better relationships with my kids and everything, but I'm like, what is it for me and what does that look like, you know?
Absolutely. And I think a lot of it, I mean, for me personally, is tied to service. So like gone on this journey, I've learned so much. I say this all the time on this podcast, I will keep learning forever until I draw my last breath. And I enjoy the journey. I enjoy the journey of learning and going deeper and deeper and deeper and love the process. But what fills me up, that does fill me up, but another component that fills me up is being able to take what I've learned and help other people. And that service component for me personally is like the biggest piece. Like if just yesterday, I'm training in breathwork, and just yesterday I helped a patient at work who was losing her mind because she had to wait for her epidural and she was in a lot of pain. And I taught her a very, very simple breathwork technique that totally calmed her down. She was able to breathe beautifully through the contractions, got her epidural. I mean, she was amazing. Not all patients like adopt the practice as well as she did. She just was really great at it. But I was like, that's all worth it, right? It was all worth it for that
It
one
was so
freaking
worth,
moment.
yes. I mean, if you can just drop like that feel good of like, how good
It
does
is
that
the
feel?
best drug in the world.
It is. It's so good. I mean,
Helping,
these things, yeah.
helping
Like,
other people is the best drug.
like tying it to, and honestly, it goes for the dips we talked about, or like the messiness that when you're in it, but, and all the, you can read all those studies too, but it's like, if you can tie your purpose to that higher thing. So when you hit the dips, it's still, you're not bringing that whole thing down. You can still look up and say, this is what I'm doing it for. And so you can always go back to that story with that woman. You're like, okay, when I'm like trying to learn this breath work and I don't have time to like wait up at night or go to the class, whatever. And you can like go back to that and be like, but there was that feel good. And like, I love, yeah. So it's like, who am I doing? What is the purpose and who am I doing this for?
And when you'll see, because you said your podcast is coming out in January, you'll see when it starts coming, when it comes out, people will start messaging you. They'll, you know, friends will text you, or people will send you stuff on social media, or maybe you'll run into somebody somewhere and they'll say something like wonderful about the podcast, that how much it helped them just to listen to it. Or, you know, I've had friends say like, I'm like hysterically crying over here listening to this podcast because I finally feel seen and heard. And I'm like, okay, you know what? The virtual cable was worth it. The struggle with the virtual cable was worth it, because people are feeling this. They're feeling good. It's helping them. So,
and you know, everyone loves community too. And it's just feeling seen and heard. And like I said, like, that's why I got in the podcast. Like, there was this one podcast I could listen on my way home and be like, they get it. And there's a different way. And like, you get it. And I'm like, I love that. I love that about your podcast. And I hope that there's some tidbit in when I release in January, because you're absolutely right. It's just like, there's so much to learn and do and be, and for people to deliver. And if whatever it takes, if they can just get that, whatever it can deliver, one little tidbit to be like, keep going. You can do it. You can do it. I love it.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yes.
Love it.
Let's go all the way back, because we kind of skipped over. So you said you were in this corporate world, you're working a ton, you got the kids, the pandemic comes. What's the moment that you're like, I'm done. I've got to get out of this job?
Yeah. You know, I think two things, because I had made the decision before the pandemic, because it was a rat race, and two conversations kept happening. One, we had nannies taking care of our kids and driving them everywhere. And my husband would, you know, like, when I would be working late and traveling, and I would always come back to this conversation with him where he'd be like, it's fine. Our kids are taken care of. Like, the boxes are checked. And I was like, that doesn't feel right to me. I want to be the one out there, you know, and I would go back to like, well, I don't want to be a stay-at-home mom. And I couldn't, like, this is clearly showing a value that I'm not living with. And then the second, so that was like an ongoing, what you call it, argument, discussion, whatever, with my husband and I, because I'd be like, we need to be there. He's like, we've got someone driving, it's fine. So I was like, something's misaligned. And the second one was, I'd come home and people like, how was your day? And be like, fine. I never had like a story, you know, I was never like, oh my God, listen to this thing.
Yeah. And
so that was like leading up to it. Then I was on maternity leave with my third child, and I came back and I started this new job at my company. And it was like the job that I thought was like, this is what I've been working for. This is super, I'm with all these amazing creatives, and it's going to be super fun. And like, people love this group. And I started, and that feeling did not come from me. It was like, I'm like, something's either wrong with me, or I've got to take a look at something, because this was going to be this is what I was working for. I'm finally in this group. And I remember driving into work one day, and it was like, okay, I go in, everyone's loving it. They're all like great. And I was driving into work, and it was like feeling like Groundhog Day, right? You know, when I was like, I'm on the same commute. I'm not really excited to go into work. And I'm like, there's nothing that will change this. I'm not having any children, so I can't hope for a maternity leave that gives me a break. I can hope for like a medical leave, I guess, but like, nothing will change this unless I do. And it was that was like, and I had grown up with parents who were entrepreneurial and had like left their corporate jobs to start. So I think I was a risk taker in that regard. Like, I had that in my background where I wasn't nervous to do that, but I was like, but my identity and everything was all tied up. Like, I'd worked for 20 plus years. So anyway, I remember that drive, and I was like, something has got to change. And I think I talked to my husband. I was like, we've got to make some change. And so I had this plan that I worked. So it was a year and a half in the making. And then pandemic hit, and I was like, well, we're all home. So maybe, I'm like, no one's going anywhere. So like, and we have our jobs. So I put it off for a while thinking like, maybe that was actually the answer. Maybe it was just, I can work from home. But that too, I don't, you're a nurse. So, oh my God, I could only imagine.
No, are you kidding? I was like, send me to work, people. Send me to work. Get me out of this house.
Oh my God, the homeschooling
at the time. I was like, this kindergartner, I cannot teach anyone to read. This is
Oh
not a skill set I possess. Get me out of here.
Okay, thank you. And thank you. So like, I think there was a work aspect where I was like, okay, like what I just explained. But then there was this home aspect, the pandemic hit, and the 3 kids at home. I had a 4th grader remote, and then a kindergartner remote, and then a 2-year-old. And I was like, and so they're here. I was still trying to work and like still in the mode where like, oh, pretend like you don't have children, and like they'd be like running around with like scissors doing like it was just. And I remember my husband at one point being like, I just didn't laugh. He was like, this is awesome. I can golf as much as I want. He was like, I'm going to go like golfing because it was outside. And I was like, if I could move out of this house, I'm saying this, but he knows. I was like, if I could move out and like go to a hotel, but everything's shut down. I can't, because the obliviousness of you and like what our kids need in the moment, and like helping them log on and log off and figure out what they need to do at home and to make sure they're still learning it was a combination of all that I was like, I am not listening to myself and what my needs and values are at all, at work or at home. And like, where do I want to spend my time? What is important to me? It was like this internal, like, I am going to like a volcano that was like, like,
yeah.
And so I think that was what started. I was like, okay, it's not the pandemic that has helped things. I have got to figure out what I want. Who do I want to serve? What do I want to help? What do I want to do? And so it was like, that was like the eye-opening thing. Like we had talked about earlier, I think where it was like, okay, now I see everywhere that I'm getting frustrated and short and yelling and not the person that I want to be, but where do I even start? Like, it's like a 2-year, forever process too. But God, I was so far from knowing any of the body awareness techniques that were out there,
Yeah. And I mean, I think your story will really resonate with a lot of people, because basically what you're saying is you had whispers of this for a really long time.
Yep.
Then you had that one moment on your drive, which I think all of us, when we hit a critical point, have a moment that later on we can look back on and be like, that was a moment. I didn't maybe recognize it as with the full intensity of what it was then, but now looking back, like the whisper had turned into a bang.
Yeah.
And then, the pandemic hit, and there was the Great Resignation, and the majority, I don't know what the exact numbers are, but I know that many more women resigned from their positions than men. And I think it's because all along, women were feeling this all along. They were feeling these whispers. They were feeling pulled in all these different directions, but they were like, well, this is what it is. I guess this is what it is. Like, there was no other model of like any other way to be.
Oh my God. It's so resonant.
And then all of a sudden, the pressure got too intense, because now you're trying to help your kids homeschool and do your job and, all of this. Yep. And then it was like the explosion, right? It was happening all along. It was just a build. It was a build. And that was the final, the straw that broke the camel's back, that old expression.
100%. Yes.
That people just decided, I cannot do this anymore. And they left. But then you're right. You're left in that limbo of, okay, but now what?
But what?
Because I don't even know what I want.
No,
I know I don't want that, but I don't know what I do want.
And I think that my one saving, I said, it's not, there's much worse things, but the one saving grace, because what I kept going back to at the time was like, I equate it to like, I kept picturing like, I'm waving the white flag. Like, I give in. You're right. I can't, I'm a statistic. I am everyone, I'm like all this. And what I went back to, and I'd like to say, so because I was always in my head, I had a plan. I was going to help small. And what I work with now is like businesses, because I grew up with my family owned a small business and like entrepreneurial. I'm going to help them grow. I do this for big businesses. I want to help. So I had this plan, but through this process of leaving and finally reaching my breaking point and being like, now's the time, I'm going to do this, I'm going to start this, was this realization of like, no. This is not waving the white flag. This is what I'm passionate about. This is actually, if you lean in, if you listen to your voice, and you can hear it even in mine, but like, if you listen to your voice, and women especially, because there is invisible labor and there's women taking on too much, that is not selfish. If you listen to what you need and you follow that path, you can be so much more impactful. And like, that's where I was like, needs to be more women out there doing their entrepreneurial thing, because you can be the mom that you want to be. You don't have to choose one or the other. You can create the world that you want to. Here's this other thing. So it was through that I was like, wait. I am not waving the white flag. I am saying like my values are being a mom, and I want to be able to be with my kids and know the nuances of when they're struggling, like you said, with the school and what level of, like math should they be in. And I want to be able to be at their practices and know, oh, that coach is actually really too hard. My son doesn't just not want to go to soccer practice. It's because he's dealing with it. You're like, I want that. But also I think I can create amazing things. And actually by being confined and coming home and just being like, it's okay, I'm impactful to no one. But now, right, if I can lean into this and have this voice with a podcast, or help women start their businesses that I'm passionate about, and like be a great mom, I am now breaking open what I can be impactful to, And so like that, like didn't know all the work that I had to do still, but I was like, that I can get on board with. And that is what is going to bring me from like, I'm not giving in. I'm like on a path to something, not running away from something, like that was the flip in my mind, I think. So,
yes. So full body chills, full body chills, because it resonates so deeply. And it's so true. The culture says you're waving the white flag. You're giving it.
Yes.
But what you're really doing is stepping into your power.
You're choosing you and being like, yeah. And I like to, go.
You're just stepping into all you can be in the world, right? Instead of just like kind of riding your life out, you're actually claiming it. You are claiming your life, your power, your purpose, your passion. And in those ways, you can change the world, which is so much better. That it comes back to service, right? Comes back to service.
It's like Katie, I like to also create, so like you see these fish that are swimming against the current, or is it salmon, that have to get whatever, whatever the fish is, right?
Yes, it's salmon.
They're like trying so hard. And that's how I was like at my job too, though. Like you're like, I am working like crazy. I am like dominating this little area of the stream, because like within your job, and you're getting amazing feedback, but you're working so hard and not with your skill sets and your life and what you want. If you just take a quick right turn and you go on the other side of the stream where the water is flowing in your direction, you are going 1,000 miles faster, but you're not working any harder. And I was like, and it was seeing those pictures in my mind, but then like living it out and being like, that's actually true. Like within the confines. And for me, again, it was like my identity within the business, like, oh, here's my title and the company I work for. And I was like, but that's within like one company. Like I could talk to anybody else and like, I don't know, that doesn't mean anything to me. And I'm like, but what if I could have impact and like talk to way more, like that. Now we're talking, and I just need to figure out who I am first, because I'm going to be reactive and defensive and short with my kids. Like, how am I supposed to be impactful to others that I want, like, I got to get me first, and what do I want? And then like, it's explosive how much you can do. So I'm still proving that out for myself too, but like the more women I talk to, the more that feel that way, the more that you can just like light the candle that's already burning for them and be like, no, keep going. It's possible. Like, it's so fulfilling. It's so fulfilling. Like you said, it's like tying it to that higher, like, potential. And
so this is what you do. You coach women, right? You coach women who are feeling like unfulfilled in their lives and help them to cross over to the other side, right?
So I do two things. So I had left my corporate and started consulting for small businesses. So I still do that. It's called Scale with Clarity, and it's helping small businesses grow. But through that process, I was like, my passion is women that they feel stuck. They have this idea of something that they want to start, and they want to leave and grow their business. And so that through the last 2 years has been leaning into that. And that's then what the impetus of this podcast was too, that I'm starting, because it's like, lean into that. It is not just professionally, but you need to figure out who you are first. You need to be your healthiest self. You need to prioritize that. What does that look like for you? And that's where then you're like, then I can give the business skills. But I was like, it needs to be a holistic picture for women, because they have unique needs and wants, and like so much to unlock, so much potential there. So twofold. So I have the Scale with Clarity too, where I work with small businesses, but the other side is like coaching women, female entrepreneurs, to start to leave and launch, like to call leave and launch.
Yes. And that's, again, coming back to like not going into that void where you can't really see where you're jumping. So it's very scary. And I would assume you have to teach women how to accept, like be in this space of acceptance that I might not get it right the first time. There might be multiple iterations of this project. This project might take different turns than the ones that I can see right now. Like I can only see this one bend in the road, but maybe once I get to that bend, I see more options. So how do you help women do that? It's scary. It's really scary, especially when you're talking about finances, people's, finances. It's a big deal. People have families to support. So how do you walk them through that?
I mean, there's two big pillars. So my background is in business. So we can work through all the tactical and we get the action plans in the 6 month and we work through your forecast and your financials. But the biggest thing, so for me too, and women like me, and I was lucky enough I have a husband that's in a corporate job and I had some, savings and some severance. So there are certainly there's situations where it's like, we don't just leave with no plan, clearly. But the biggest thing for the women, I like to say it's with ambitious women, and the biggest hurdle, honestly, is the mindset and the identity that they're leaving. They're like, what am I doing? And I want to have it all planned out because I'm going to jump and I'm going to be super successful. And it's the thought of leaving. I've been doing something for 20 plus years. I went to school. I'm getting positive feedback. Why would I just leave? What are people going to say? Like that is actually, I'm not minimizing the financial aspect of that, but that is the biggest thing that kind of goes on talked about. We can build a business plan all you want and get a plan. And I like to say, like, everyone has a skill set, especially if you've been in your job for 20 plus years, you can leverage that and do fractional work. You can, as you're building what you need, you will never know what you actually like if you're always in your head. And so we talked about, right? You've got to get in there and try it and iterate and trust it will change. It will change. Like I left with the scale with clarity and I still enjoy it, but I was like, oh my God, I didn't realize how passionate about until I did it. And I was like, every woman needs to do, so you will learn so much about yourself by going through that process. So one is you're not waving the white flag. So that is what, like, we start at the heart of it is like, you are not waving the white flag. You are way more than just what you're doing. And you could be more impactful actually there. But then the second is getting in touch with yourself and that mindset. And so like the retreat that I ran, it's called Rediscover You. I used to think that like vision boards and, I was always, again, like the analytical corporate, like give me my metric, like, what do I need to attain for the next year? But like, there is something to be said around doing those values exercises and figuring out like, what have I liked in the past? What have I not? That takes time too. And if you're going to jump without doing that internal work and spending some time figuring out what that is, like, you're just going to make the process longer because you're going to have to do it eventually. And so long-winded way to say is like, yes, there's tactical business steps, but for me and my process and a lot of the women that I know that I work with, like it is the identity. It is figuring out that you're meant for more. It is that action will help you clarify. You're not going to know the end goal. Like it's going to change 1,000 times. Yeah. It's figuring yourself out and knowing how you want to serve. You're going to get 5 clients and realize that's not the type of client I want. That is, but you've got to iterate. And so it's a mindset thing that we work through a lot too, like every time. And the last thing I'll say too, is it's not just a one time, I think for me, it was like, especially in school and you do it, it's like, okay, check, done. Now the next thing. Yes. And that type of work, I was like, and even when I started doing my own programs or like my own code for me, I was like, hey, give me the plan for the next month or 6 weeks. And what do I need to do? And I'll do the homework each week and then I'll get through. And I'm like, it was this real, like that's not the case. Like it is a forever thing, but it's learning what works for you and continuing to come back to that, et cetera. So it's kind of an introduction into a lot of all that stuff too. It's just realizing what it is for you. So.
And I would assume it's a lot of, I'm just basing this off my own personal experience. Yeah. So I was, I went to college, I was a chemistry major, and then I taught high school. And then I went back to school and I became a nurse. And then I was going on to get my master's in nursing and I got like halfway through it and the pandemic hit and I was hating it. I mean, I was not enjoying the schooling, but I was getting through it. I was checking the boxes. I was getting straight A's. Yep. I was not enjoying it. And then, homeschooling and pandemic and we had got a puppy. And
can you hear mine? I'm sorry, but she's not,
I can't, but I was worried mine would bark. Okay. But yeah, it was all that. And then finally I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I don't even like this. Why am I doing this? But it's just checking the boxes and checking the boxes.
Yes.
And every other career move I had ever made, whether it be like the type of education I had or the job that I got, it was very, I would just step into it, right? I would just step in. I step in and they tell me, this is the system that's already created. Yep. This is how you operate within the system. These are your responsibilities. Yep. And then I just have to learn it. I have to learn the system, learn the responsibilities, and then output, right? You get output from me.
Yeah.
But when you talk about going into something entrepreneurial, I was like, I don't even know where to begin. I don't know which end is up.
Yeah.
I don't know. I literally know, like it feels very confusing, very scary.
Yeah.
And there's this only in my mind, and I know that now, but this big risk of failure, right? So we can talk about what really failure is.
Yes.
Okay, that's a whole other topic.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in my mind, it's like, okay, well, what if this fails? And what does that say about me and this idea and all of the like self-doubt and imposter syndrome that comes with that? So, embracing the unknown, embracing the risk of, I'm using air quotes, failure, because I don't use that term the way we would typically think of it. And recognizing that I have all that I need inside of me. It just needs to come forth. It's not easy.
It's not easy. And the biggest differentiator, if you look at any entrepreneur, and it's easier said than done, which is why I think, so a lot of the women I work with, it is much about like them learning something as having someone who's walked the path that gets it, that can like community. And that's what I needed, as much as hold me accountable. You're not crazy. This can work. Of course, this, that's not failure. It's just a reminder of somebody, because I didn't have that. And that's the biggest things, like group, right? Like my husband is super supportive, but he's still in the corporate world. And a lot of the colleagues and friends that I have are still in that. So it's this unique thing to say, like, you are stepping out on your own, and it's going to be very different and feel different, but you're right. It's having the community and someone to say, like, you're not crazy. This is what this looks like. And you've got to keep trying. And you're right. You could do a whole thing about, is that failure? Is that not, but it's going to be trial and error. And it's so different, because I like to say, like, when you were in a job that was predefined, that you stepped into, you were told what you needed to do. And if you were really good, and it's kind of like at school too, right? You could meet those people wherever they are. If you're really empathetic and a people pleaser, like, you are dominating it. Entrepreneurs, I first wanted to look to others and say, what do they do? And clearly there's a path, you should focus on bringing in your revenue first, and then build your base, your, different systems that you need in place. But a true entrepreneur is unique. And that's what sets them apart, is because they are leaning into, you can do a million different ways. You can take, writing legal contracts as your, your skill set, but you could do it 1,000 different ways and deliver your client a million different ways and have a different personality that's going to resonate. Because I like to say, when you leave, like, you need, depending on your pricing, you could have 10 clients and be set for the year. And there are millions of people out there. So you're absolutely right. It is the process of figuring yourself out, as opposed to looking at an action, and saying, like, this is what I need to do tactically. It is. And it's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. It's so uncomfortable. And it's still, like, all of us. And I like to say, like, I look at myself too, and I'm like, I am a coach to businesses, but I need someone to meet, like, the stuff that I even know, but you're like, I'm in my own way. Cause you need just, like
a therapist, they don't therapize themselves. They go see their own therapist.
100%. You're like, of course it's hard. And you're going to be all your thoughts, and you need someone who's out there to be like, shut those thoughts down. That is your brain working in overtime again. Like, don't listen to it now. Like, you're right. It is a scary, scary jump. And I think sometimes, I don't know, but the easy excuse is the financials, and let me figure that out. But the deeper thing is the fear of failure, the inner voice that you've never listened to before because you've always succeeded. It's that identity. And it's like taking time to think through all that, because that is that's honestly the biggest hurdle. You can figure the financials out. That's the biggest hurdle that only you can do. Others can't do it for you. So.
Right. And I think we're stepping into a new era for women. And I think the pandemic was a big catalyst for it. I mean, again, I think the rumblings were always there, but no one really knew what to do. And then this kind of broke things open in a different way. But as women, we have continued to make advances in the working world, in the corporate world, and, climbing the corporate ladder, and all the things that we as women over the years fought for to have.
Yes.
But we were trying to fit into a system that was designed for men.
Full body chills. Right? Yes.
And now I think we're in this beautiful era where we're saying, no, but we're not men. And we don't want to fit into that system. And the system doesn't work for us. So I guess we're going to have to create our own system.
Oh my God, those are literally, I'm so sorry. I just can't even hold it in. It's 100%. Like I work with a lot of women that are looking for their next job. And I used to a lot with like career transition but oh my God, you're speaking about that because I just so resonate with, I don't want to help women break the glass ceiling because I am pissed that it's there. I think in order to break it, you kind of have to be you have to mold yourself to what the culture has all been set up about until you get to a level. And then it's hard to switch back to do what you've not done your whole career. I want women to build their own. You do not need to break the glass ceiling. You can go and create your own. And I think that is the new world, is like, we can do this a different way. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to have like what they call masculine energy, which is go get them. And I'm going to have action plans. And I'm going to be oriented, and I'm going to just want to dominate, but also do it in a really compassionate way. And I like bringing people along with me and collaborating and, having these deep conversations that mean differently. And so I could not agree with you more. I think absolutely that's what drives me too. Cause it's like both this anger and like passion mixed together, that it was, why is it that way? But also, oh my gosh, I think there's this wave of and I think the benefit of the pandemic is that it forced everyone on kind of a playing field in the fact that it was staying at home, couldn't go anywhere. And so then this whole new world of wait, we can do this differently opened up, that women were asking for because of the different priorities that we tend to have anyways. And you combine it with also an education around self-care is important and you don't have to do it. There's definitely, but the macro factors that were in play, create your own business and do it the way that you want to do. And now that there's so many ways to do that, whether it's virtually and et cetera, that's there. So it gets full body chills.
Female owned and operated businesses are going to run so much differently than male owned and operated businesses. And that's okay. This is nothing against the male gender. This is a recognition that men and women are just different.
Yes.
And that's okay. And we both have different skill sets and different things that are, we tend to focus on or are important to us. And it's all okay. And it's all welcome here. But I just want women to have the option to opt into a system that feels better for them.
Yes. And know that it's possible. There's not just a one or two, that used to, that there used to be do this in the corporate world and whatever, or, 9-to-5 job, traditional job, or stay at home or take the part-time job where there's no upward mobility. Now there is, but it starts with what is important to you, and then building it around you. And there is a way to build it and have so much impact in whatever way that is. Speaking engagements and products, create your own products and presentations and courses and training. There's just so much that's out there, and it's just coming from a place of who are you and how do you want to be too? So.
And how fast do you want to scale it, and scale it around your life, right?
Oh my God.
Not try to fit your life around the job, but scale the job around your life.
One of my clients, thank you. And if that's gonna be a lot, but such an important topic, because one of my clients her son, her only son, one child, is leaving for college in a year. And so we're looking at her plans for the next year. And I'm like, do you really want to grow that? Is that the growth that you want next year? Because listen, it's important holistically. You cannot be a person, or you're on the path to, again, being misaligned. Let's be on, what redefining success is what we talked about earlier too. Right. And so you're absolutely right. And it's fine. I always say life is 6 to 8 careers, and it's not failure. You are making yourself unique in whatever way. But if you pause, if you switch, if you lean into something else and decides that wasn't it, but you've taken everything you want and you're going towards something else, you're never leaving, you're going towards something else. So you have eight different whole careers ahead of you. So,
and you're bringing everything with you. It's
everything.
The experience and the knowledge that you gained during that previous career doesn't come with you. It comes with you, and you integrate it into this new piece. And that's why you said it earlier. It's hard to say, what is that last step? What am I, you can say, what do I enjoy doing? I'm going to lean into what this feels good, my intent, but something could pop up that you don't even know. I mean, for you, being a teacher and then a nurse and caretaking, but educating, and now going into podcasting, all those skill sets are coming together, in such a unique, wonderful way that no one else could serve. So I love it. It's thinking differently about everything you bring, and figuring yourself out, and knowing that that it's so important. And the voice that you tell yourself, all of that comes together. It's so powerful that you have something big to deliver. So That's awesome. That's awesome. I don't want to keep you. I know you have somewhere to go, and actually been over our time a little bit. So, thank you so much for being here.
Kate, this was this is why I love, thank you for having me, because I could just talk hours about this. And I just love, like, I mean, honestly, like you said, I love the full body. I'm taking that full body chills, because it's like when you resonate, you're like, same.
Yeah, it's like your whole body is like, yes.
I'm not alone. We feel the same. I love it.
I will
thank
put
you so
all
much.
the ways that people can find you in the show notes, including at least the name of your podcast.
Yes.
That way they can look it up. It comes out what, January 9th. January 9th.
Yeah.
I will be tuning in for sure.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure we'll be, in each other's lives. I just feel it. So we'll talk again.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
Katie.
you so much, Brooke.
All right, see you.
Bye.
Bye.